Tech Bite Tips.
Welcome to another Tech Bite Tips series. In this series, we're going to be talking about an introduction to the Azure DevOps platform. I hope you like this series. This is going to be geared towards beginners and people that may have a little bit of experience using Azure DevOps. And if you're into DevOps, you'll definitely like this one. It serves as preparation to get to the AZ400 certification. So before you start trying to go for that one, I would recommend you watch this series that I'm going to be creating. It's like the basics, the introduction to Azure DevOps. It's a very, very good platform, very useful, currently used by a lot of companies, a lot of Fortune 500 companies. So welcome to this series. Hope you like it, and let's get to that. First of all, let's talk about me. My name is Jorge Pabon. I have about 11 years of experience right now. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies, and I'm currently working with a Fortune 30 company. So I've worked with everything from small companies to very large corporations. I've worked mainly as two types of roles, as a DevOps engineer or as a software engineer for the past 11 years, mostly as a DevOps engineer. So Azure DevOps has been a tool that I've used very, very often in my line of work. So I really think it's a very beneficial tool to learn. And my background is in computer engineering. So that's a little bit about me. Let's go now into this lesson. On this lesson, we're going to cover what is Azure DevOps, how did it evolve, how is it organized, how to create a DevOps organization, and how to create a team project and teams within Azure DevOps. So that's going to be the basics, how to get started. So let's go and cover what is Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps currently is a software as a service platform that functions as a tool chain for developing and deploying software. And this is provided by Microsoft. It was created by Microsoft, and they currently hosted and provided to you as a service. And it's composed of several sub-modules, I would call it. The first part is the Azure Boards, which is the agile planning part of it, for you to track issues and stories and visualize how your team is working, their speed, what is called the velocity, how many things they can get done in a certain amount of time, and that helps them also to plan, because you can do the ceremonies there, like the planning, the poker, etc. Additionally, you have the Azure Pipelines, which is the CI/CD platform within Azure DevOps, and it has support for bare metal, virtual servers, as well as containers, so you can manage all those things from the Azure Pipelines. Additionally, it has the Azure Repos. The Azure Repos is basically a place where you can store your code. Think of it as like a GitHub, like a private GitHub. So Azure hosts repositories where you can store your code for your applications and infrastructure and all of that. Additionally, you also have the Azure Artifacts, which is a location for you to store the software that you've already built and you've created compiled artifacts of. So this is where you store those artifacts. And you also have the Azure Test Plans, which is a place to plan and perform tests on your code, applications, etc. So how did it come to what it is now, right? Because this is a project that Microsoft has been developing for a long time. It started with the Team Foundation server in 2005, which was basically like a self-hosted server. So you would create your own server, and it would mainly be used for management of the work and source control. That's how it all started. But then in 2013, it kind of evolved, and they rebranded it Visual Studio Online, because that was the first time that they actually offered it as a software as a service. So it was basically the Team Foundation server, but online. You didn't have to host it yourself. Then 2 years later, in 2015, they rebranded it again to Visual Studio Team Services, and that was because they were starting to focus more on DevOps, not only on the source code management and things like that. It was starting to become more of a platform for you to do DevOps all the way. And it was the first version that included free users. So they would give you 5 free users for you to try it. And now it's reached the point where it's what it is now, which is Azure DevOps. It was rebranded for the last time in 2018, and it was renamed to further focus on the DevOps application side of things and for it to be a software as a service offering. Now, within Azure DevOps, how everything is organized, right? So the first thing is we have like at the macro view, at the top level, you have what is called an organization. And this organization is tied to a Microsoft account, so it could be like your own personal account or a company account, or like if you have resources like in the Azure cloud and you have like a tenant tied to that account is used for that. And it usually represents like a corporate organizational unit, like a company, right? So you would usually have one organization for your whole company. And you, like I said, you usually just need to create one. And within that organization, then you can build team projects. The team projects are isolated, so the resources and the teams that are in each project belong only to that project. They cannot cross to other team projects, and like the same with the code and all the things. Everything's isolated. So you want to create as least possible projects, because if you start creating a bunch of team projects, then you might run into a problem where, for example, you have a team and you would like to assign that team to another project, but you already isolated that, and then you can't, for example, assign a team to that project. You would have to basically create a new team for that other project. But be aware that it allows you to isolate resources and things. And you can always work on one project at a time when you are using the Azure DevOps platform, and you can switch between projects. So that's not a problem at all. You can one at a time switch between projects and do work on any of them. And like I said, they are isolated units. And within those team projects, then you can have teams of people that are assigned to a project. If you can see here in the right side, all the teams are different. There's no team that is in more than one team project. That's on purpose. That's to showcase that they're isolated. You can have as many teams as you want inside a project. Could be 1, could be 2, could be 20. It's up to you. You organize it based on your company and your structure. And you assign users to the teams. So if you have, for example, a team of developers, there could be one team, or a DevOps team, that could be another team. And then you assign them to the projects that you want to work. Just be aware that the teams are inside a project, so they're isolated from other team projects. And they own their Azure DevOps resources. So yeah, that's basically how it's organized, from a bird's eye view. And from now on, we're just gonna create a DevOps organization using the Azure DevOps platform, which you can use for free. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so to use the Azure DevOps for free, we can go into dev.azure.com, and when you load that page, you are going to be presented with something like this. In my case, I'm going to use my personal email account for this. You can use any Microsoft account to create a DevOps organization. So we're going to go and say that we agree with this and continue. And then we need to specify the name of your organization. In my case, I'm going to say that this is going to be Tech by Tips, as is the name of the YouTube channel. And we need to specify where we want the projects to be hosted. I am in the US, so currently there's only Central US within the US. So I'm gonna leave that checked, and then we just have to make sure we comply with this validation here with the CAPTCHA and continue. Okay, DSM. Alright, it is all meant supposed to be together. Good to know, good to know. And here we go. Now we finally have our organization created in Azure DevOps. So we can see here Tech by Tips is the name of our organization. And as you can see, we can create another organization there. And you can manage the organization settings in here. So that's the first thing, how you create an organization. So now that we have our organization, let's go ahead and create a first team project. Once we have our organization created, it immediately prompts us to create a project. And as we can see here, it says that by default, all the projects are going to be private. So only the people that you give access to will be able to view this project. And the public project is disabled. So if you want to have a public project that is accessible over the internet, then you have to go into the organization policies, which is in the organization settings, to make that change to allow you to create a project that is public. So you go into the policies, here's where you would make that change to allow public projects right here. So in this case, I'm not going to do it, but I want to show it to you that you can do that, and that's where you go to do it. Let's go back to the root, and in here then we're going to be creating a private teams project. And remember what I said before, a team project is a way to isolate things. So try to make it as broad as possible without it being too broad, so that you can cover things like multiple things that you're working on with the teams that you define. For example, you can organize this based on organizational units in the company. For example, you can have a team project that is for, I don't know, the developers that work on HR, or another team project that is for the infrastructure team, for example, and things along those sorts. So you can have a project that is all encompassing for those teams, and within that project then you can have your own repositories that'll contain the source code for all the things that you're going to do within those teams. So let's say, for example, that I want to create a development team, right? So let's call it web development for the project, right? And this project involves all of the web development for the company. Let's say, like the applications that our company is going to be creating to serve to our public, like our featured applications to our clients. So in the advanced option here, you can select important things here. For example, how do you want to control your repositories, your code? You have the option of using Team Foundation version control or Git. I honestly go with Git. That's what most companies are using now. You know, if you're used to using GitHub or GitLab or anything like that, you're going to be fine using Git in Azure DevOps. You're going to be using the Git repos. And then for the work item process, it depends on how your team works. Right now, many companies are Agile or Agile Scrum. So those are the ones I would probably recommend you to use. We can go with Agile, and then we can click on the Create Project button. And we got an error here, so let's see what's happening. Okay, we click back, and it doesn't matter. It actually created the team, so don't worry about that. And if you go into this team here by clicking it, then you'll get into the actual interface of Azure DevOps for that specific team. So if you look, we're going to see things that we mentioned before. On the left side, you're going to have the overview, which has basically the summary of your team and how the project is going, statistics, and the members of that team. You can see the dashboards here, which is also a way to see information about how the work is going. You have your wiki, which is where you document all information regarding the job that you're working on. And you have the boards. Here's where you do the sprint planning and all the agile ceremonies and everything that is related to that. Underneath that, we have the repositories or the repos. This is where you're going to be storing your code. So this is where you see your commits, your push, your different repositories, etc. So we have only one right now for web development. And here you can see information like the branches in your code, the pushes, the commits, the tags, the pull requests, and all that. And then down here you have the pipelines. This is basically the CI/CD part of the Azure DevOps. This is where you create your pipelines for creating your deliverables, like your artifacts, testing your code, etc. Well, actually, you can do it there, but there's also this section here, which is the test plans, where it's more fine-tuned for testing. So this is the other part. And then the artifacts is where you would store your end result builds, right? Your artifacts for your builds. For example, let's say you have a PHP application that could be packed into a zip file, and that zip file will be stored in the artifacts. Or if you have an iOS application, that could also be packaged into something. Or if you have a Java project, you could end up with a WAR file or a jar file that is stored in the artifacts. So those are the main areas in Azure DevOps. We're going to be covering those with details later, but yes, that's how you get to that. And you always have those breadcrumbs up here, so you can go back through the navigation all the way up to the organization here. So that's basically the main view here of the Azure DevOps once you have your project. Alright, and now that we have our organization and we have our first team project, then we can focus on creating a team for our team's project. So let's go ahead and do that. From here, we're going to click on the team's project. And once we're here in the normal view of the team's project, we'll see that this changes from organization settings to project settings. So we can click here where it says project settings, and then we can manage the whole project, right? So we can, for example, give it a profile image to that project. We can set administrators for this project. By default, it's going to be you who created the organization and the team project. And here you can enable and disable the services within Azure DevOps. So let's say your team plans to do like the testing and building and all that within the pipeline, so you don't actually need the test plans and the artifacts here. So then you can just disable that, and that'll turn that off on the left side of the menu for that specific project. So you can do things like that. And if you want to get rid of a project, you can always come here into the project settings and then just delete it here. But in this case, we want to create a team, so we can go here on the left side where it says teams. And currently we have the web development team here, but we can actually create a new team here. So if we click this button on the right side here, we can create a new team here. So let's say this is going to be the user interface and user experience development team. So you can name them that, and then you can add members here. In this case, I don't really have any more members in this organization, but if you're in a normal company, you will have this connected to like your Active Directory, and then you can see a bunch of different people here that you can then add as members of this group. Just as an example, let's say we want to put somebody here that sounds presidential, so let's put Donald Trump, but as we can see, you know, it's maybe invalid. I don't have that person. Or Joe Biden here. I also don't have Joe Biden. So if they were people that actually existed within the organization, I would be able to add that. And then you can put a description here about this team. Like, this team is in charge of the user interface and user experience development. And here you can specify the administrators of this team. You can have more than one, and you can also manage permissions here, so it automatically can inherit permissions. In this case, it would basically inherit the contributors' permissions of the web development team. And basically, if we had valid names here, we could just do that, but in this case, unfortunately, we cannot go ahead and create with those. So then I would have to create an empty team basically that only has me. But in this case, we have here a new team with all the information that we specified in here, and me as the member. So that's how you create a new team within a Teams project. So you can go back into the teams. If you don't want a team, you can always manage the team like you manage all the other things. So you should be able to just go into the settings, and if you don't need that team, you can just delete that team there and it'll go away. So it's easy to manage the teams. And let's go back up again. If we want to manage the project, we can always go into the project settings and we can delete a project here if you don't need it. And if you go all the way back up to the organization and you go into the organization settings, you can always delete the organization here too. So you can manage that. You can manage all the features for the organization here, for the teams inside here, project settings, you can manage all of that. And yeah, that's basically all that I wanted to show on this first video: how to create an organization, how to create a Teams project, and how to create a team within a Teams project. Hope you like it. We'll continue this series. This is going to be give you more details into the fundamentals of Azure DevOps. If you like it, if that's something that you feel curious and interested in, please leave a like and comment in the comment section below. Let me know if you like it, what you want to see. And also remember, you can share the videos to help us grow the channel. And also, I do not monetize the channel, so you feel free to use the links in the description below if you find it useful and you wanted to donate to encourage me to keep producing content that is educational and will help you to grow in your career and your knowledge. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you very much. See you on the next one.